Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 61 of Mad Knitting. I think my last episode, I said it was 59, but it was actually 60. So assuming I am keeping accurate count, this is episode 61. It is Tuesday, April 23. It's my dad's birthday. I don't think he watches, but just in case, happy birthday, Dad. I will be calling you later. And it's the year 2024, and here we are. It is springtime in Wisconsin where I live with my family. And it finally is kind of feeling like spring. The sun is shining, the flowers are blooming, my asparagus is coming up. These are all welcome things. So today I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I've finished, a couple of things that I have in progress, and hopefully I will have time to speak just a little bit about some stuff I've been reading. If you're new here, I live in Madison, Wisconsin with my family. I work from home for a small nonprofit, and knitting is my main hobby. I also sew a little bit, and there's other things I'm interested in. Occasionally I talk about current events, if it feels relevant or something that I just really need to say. And sometimes I like to talk about what I'm reading, but mostly this is knitting and crafting. Let's see. I don't know about you all, but I am like kind of screened out. Of course, I'm sitting here in front of my phone making a video, but my job, I like my job, but I feel like some days all I do is write emails and go to meetings on Zoom. Like, that's pretty much my whole job, and it can get a little fatiguing in the eyes, I think. So it's nice that I have something, that I have a hobby I can do to keep my hands busy. I do a lot of sock knitting during work. Anyway. Okay, so I am wearing the Kinsun sweater. This is a pattern from the book Moon and Turtle, published by Pom Pom Press by Sachiko and Kiyomi Bergen. To make this, it just calls for like a regular DK or sport yarn. I combined a fingering weight single ply and a strand of mohair silk, and I striped the hand-dyed speckled yarn is from Republica Unicornia, and then the solid color is Knit Picks Aloft. And you can see that I only had one skein of the hand-dyed, so when I ran out in the sleeves, I just finished up with the Aloft. And there's a lot of pink in this. I mean, I think it's like magenta leaning pink, but still, this is pretty unmistakably pink. And it's not usually a color I wear a lot, but every time I wear this, I get compliments. I think it's probably a good color for me, and it's very striking, you know, with these bright colors. So I'm leaning into it. I'm also wearing running clothes underneath this because I need to go running today. If I don't move every day, I have a hard time sleeping. So anyway, sometimes I just have to put on the running gear and go when I have the opportunity. Okay, let's see. Let me share my finished objects with you. We'll start with a pair of socks. I've shared these socks multiple times because they were in progress for a little over a month. So I won't spend too much time on them, but they are for my son. This is part of the Collegiate Sock project for him. That's what I'm calling it. I'm not doing a hashtag or anything, but anyway, because he is graduating high school and leaving for college this fall, I am making him several pairs of warm woolly socks to take with him because he will be staying in the upper Midwest. For all of them, I am using Knit Picks Hawthorne fingering weight. This is the color Slabtown, which is a mix of sort of purples and browns and khaki. From a distance, they just kind of look like variegated brown, and I really like them. I really need to get started on the next pair. My goal was to knit one pair every month until he goes to college or I run out of yarn. I mean, I'm never really going to run out of yarn, but we had picked 6 skeins together, so I could theoretically finish a little bit ahead of time. But I'm kind of behind because April is almost over and I have not started pair number 4. Anyway, I've settled on a stitch count and pattern that works very well for his foot. I use size 1.5 needles. This yarn is a little bit thicker than the sock yarn I'm used to using, so I go up to a 1.5. For this, I cast on 66 stitches. Everything is, well, there's 1x1 rib at the top and then 1x1 garter rib for the rest of the leg and the top of the foot. I knit all my socks cuff down because that's my preference. And I do a slip stitch heel. For this pattern, I like to have that line, that column of knit stitches go all the way down the heel, so that lines up nicely. And then stockinette for the bottom of the foot, and there you go. Good socks. I need to put these back away. I don't think we're gonna need warm socks for a while here, at least not for my kids who run very warm-blooded. So that's finished object number 1. Finished object number 2. I worked pretty much exclusively on this for the past couple of weeks. I had started this in my last episode, and this is all I really wanted to knit, so it's done. This is the Livy shawl. And I'm very fond of it. I need to get some pictures of it. So this is the third one I've made. The other one I finished very recently, and I showed it last time, so I should go get it and compare it. Compare the two. But I'll show you this one first. So it's a pattern by Tammy Gore. You start at the bottom, you do all these increases to get this cool V shape. You can see you use 2 different colors. There's a couple places where you've got this nice yarn over pattern. Only knit stitches in this thing because it's a garter stitch project. At one point, your pattern of increases and decreases changes, so that's how you end up with this asymmetrical shape, and you get this nice long point at the other end. I like this because it is a shawl. It's interesting to knit. You know, there's always something going on, whether it's stripes or yarn overs or whatever, but it's long like a scarf. So I can wear it like this. It won't slip off. I don't have, like, my problem with shawls, as much fun as they are to make, is that when they're very, very deep, like triangle shaped shawls, I often don't really know how to wear them because there's so much fabric that can either hang down your front or your back, and that's just kind of not how I dress most of the time. But this I really like, which is why I keep making this pattern over and over. So I used, let me talk about the yarn I used. Sorry, I went out of frame there to get all my stuff. So this is special because I bought the yarn during our trip to New Zealand, which was the end of March and the beginning of April this year. It was an incredible trip. I shared a little bit about it in my last episode. The one bummer, I shared last time that we'd all caught this respiratory virus, and actually turned out it was strep. We all had strep, and we didn't know it until well after we got home. So we all had undiagnosed strep for weeks, and that was fun. Anyway, I'm much better now, I'm glad to say. So this is using some of the yarn I got on that trip. I got this yarn called Zilana Rimu. It's a fingering weight. And it's special. It is exclusive to, I think you can buy it outside of New Zealand, but it can only be made there because it is using New Zealand merino. I think New Zealand merino. Yes, fine New Zealand merino, 60%, and 40% brush-tail possum. And as I shared last time, possums are an invasive creature. They're about the size of a raccoon or a cat. They're native to Australia and were brought into New Zealand by British colonizers. Boo, thumbs down to that. Who wanted to hunt them and then lost interest, and then these animals just sort of took over. They're very destructive. They eat a lot of the foliage, so they're competing for food with other animals, and they eat the eggs of a lot of birds that are now endangered in New Zealand. So that's not good. However, a byproduct of culling them is that their fiber is really, really lovely when you combine it with merino. So I've been trying to think how to describe how this feels. You can see that it's got kind of a halo. It's very soft. It's very soft. It feels, I think, a lot like cashmere. And I was expecting it to shed quite a bit. It feels like cashmere or Angora, actually. And it's drapey, but it doesn't shed like Angora would shed. So that was a happy surprise. I used, so one skein of this yarn was 40 grams and how much? 167 yards, which means I had a little over, I had about 350 yards of each color, which was almost enough for this shawl. This little itty bit of green is all I have left. Absolutely all I had left. The pattern calls for 200 grams of fingering weight yarn. And like if you have 2 skeins of stock yarn, it works out perfectly. What I used for my previous shawl, which I'll get up and show you in a bit, I had like little kind of egg-shaped balls left, but for this, I ran out. In fact, this last part, so this is the end of the shawl, the green, which was the main color, you use just a slight bit more of the main color than the contrasting color. I was supposed to do a few more ridges of this green before switching to the contrast, but I could tell that I was going to run out mid-row, which I didn't want. So I went ahead and broke the yarn and added the contrast color. And as I went along, I could tell that I was running lower and lower and lower on this tan. And in fact, I ran out 2 garter ridges and the cast off away from the end. So I went stash diving and found something that is such a close match, I don't think you can tell. If you look really, really, really close, I don't know if it's going to show up on the camera. You can definitely see the difference in the texture if you're looking at it like in real life. But I left these ends unwoven in so you could see just how far I got before I ran out of that yarn. I mean, I was so close to the end. So I don't regret that I didn't buy more of this Ilana yarn because I didn't want to have a whole lot left over. And I'm glad that I had a stash to look through and find just what I needed. I thought, and you know, when I was working on this as I went along, I was thinking I might run out of yarn a lot sooner, in which case I think I would have just picked a third color that just contrasted completely and striped it in as sort of a color block accent. You know, maybe like a deep navy blue or a dark heathery red, something like that. But as it was, if I just had this very last little bit to go, I thought that might look kind of odd. So I went with the exact match instead. I will talk about the yarn I used for that in just a bit, but I'm going to go get that other shawl just so you can see how the 2 yarns compare in look and drape. Okay, so this is the Livy shawl I made on the trip. It's a little wrinkled because I've had it just bunched up in my like basket of stuff, of outerwear stuff, which since it's still April, I haven't washed it all and put it away yet because this is Wisconsin. It could still snow, could still get cold. Anyway, I didn't run out of yarn for this because I had 400 yards of each skein. This is Coast to Coast Yarn Company. It's one of their sock yarns. It's a merino. I think there's a merino nylon. Yeah, there's nylon in it. And the yardage is the same, I think, or very, very close to the Zilana. I had a little better than 330 yards. Maybe I said 350 before. I should have said 330. I had about 330 yards of each color of this for 80 grams and 400 yards of each color for this for 100 grams. So that's pretty darn close in terms of yards per gram or yards per 100 grams. But this one has more drape, more space between the stitches, I think. You can just see that it's loosely knit because I used size 6 needles for it. I used the exact same needles for both shawls. This, because it has 40% possum, it has all that extra fuzz, it did not feel like I was knitting on big needles. It felt like it just filled it right in. It felt like knitting with sport weight yarn. It still has drape. I mean, it's lovely and soft and will feel very nice to wear when it's actually cold outside. But anyway, I don't think I quite have this pattern out of my system yet. I think I mentioned before that I have some like fingering weight single ply and then a mohair silk in pretty much the same color. So my plan is to make another Livy shawl out of those, and the contrast won't be in the color so much as the texture of the yarn. And I think that will be really neat, but I'm not exactly sure when I'll get to that. Excuse me. Still coughing, I guess. Okay. That is it for finished objects. It's only been a couple of weeks. And as far as works in progress, I've only got one really to show you. But I've been doing some swatching, which is exciting. Oh no, I have two. Duh, I have two. So for my first work in progress, I'm just going to basically flash it for you. Oh my gosh, look, more pink. This is a pair of socks. They're a gift for someone whose birthday is coming up, so I really need to finish them. I'm still on the first sock. This is just a plain Jane sock in Knit Picks Felici. It's a self-striping yarn and fingering weight. The color is called Goth Kitty. So it's pinks and a dark purple and shades of gray, which is kind of perfect for this person. I like using Felici yarn. The changing colors make it interesting. I just do plain stockinette for all of it and a short row heel to maintain the stripe pattern, without distorting it too much. And it's fast and easy to knit up. And, I've got a 2-day meeting in a different city coming up next week. So I'll probably get a lot done on these then, if not before. Now my other work in progress, I'm going to come back to the yarn that I used to finish this shawl. Am I all over the place? I apologize if I'm all over the place. This is the yarn that I used to finish the shawl. I could not believe what a close match it was. These neutrals can be hard to match, because they can lean brown, they can lean gray. There are so many shades of light and dark. There's heathered and not heathered and tweedy and everything. And amazingly, this was the right color and the right weight. And it just worked out perfectly. But I have a lot of this yarn and it's pretty special. And it's something I got a while ago. And in rediscovering it, I decided I needed to start a new project with it. Never mind that I brought back 2 sweater quantities from New Zealand, which I did swatch, so I'll show you those in a bit. Never mind that I have all these other sweater quantities in my stash. No, I really wanted to use this yarn. This is special because it is yarn by Clara Parks. It is called Clara Yarn. I don't remember how many years ago she was selling this. Probably 8 or 9. It's been a while, maybe longer. She had a couple of different runs of this. These small batch runs. This is CVM Rommeldale 3.0 Alabaster. Alabaster is the color, I guess. The wool is from Pennsylvania. It's breed specific. It's undyed, natural colors. Oh, a woolen spun 2-ply yarn made in Wisconsin. Probably a Blackberry Ridge mill. That's what the spinning feels like. from Pennsylvania grown CVM Roll. It's very soft, very bouncy. And the tragic story with this, if you look in this bag, you'll see that there's like a lot of balls, like a lot of little balls. You know what that means? You know what it means when I have all these little balls of yarn? Tragedy struck when I was going to wind these up several years ago. I mean, I told you I've had this a while, and I kept finding breaks in the yarn, and sure enough, there was moth damage. In fact, I had this one kind of wooden box of yarn that was not well sealed, apparently, because there was moth damage in several of the skeins in that box. So I've learned my lesson. Everything is stored in more tightly sealed plastic tubs. I was distraught. I was upset. I put it in the freezer for like a week or two. Who knows what that did? But I didn't want to throw it out because this is so nice. It comes in this beautiful dark brown color. It comes in this beautiful natural cream color. And then the other color I bought was this tan. So it's something between a fingering and a sport weight. It's listed as fingering, but I feel like it sort of fills in and works very nicely when you knit it at a sport weight gauge. And I have no idea what my intention with this was when I bought it. I bought it in different colors, so I must have been thinking color work. And I bought enough that I can make a sweater. And I think I even started a sweater with it a few years ago, and something wasn't working out. I just kind of didn't like the fabric it was making for the pattern that I had chosen. So I pulled it out, put it back in bags, put it back in storage where it just sat, and I kept thinking about it and thinking about it, and then forgetting about it and thinking about it. And the other day when I was on the hunt for something to finish this shawl and I found it, I thought, oh, I forgot how nice this yarn was and how much I wanted to use it. So I have started a new sweater. And one of the things I like about this is that because it is so light, I think it'll be, I don't know if I'll finish it really in time to wear this spring, but it'll be a good transitional sweater to wear for the days when it is cool, but not too chilly. And you just need something to keep the chill off. So the pattern I have left somewhere else. Let me go get it. The pattern is called Garland. It's by Stephanie Lutvin, also known as Telly Bean Knits. And you can see it's got this beautiful colorwork vine pattern going down the yoke. I think there's a lot of room for playing with different colors or using small bits of leftover yarn or minis or something in the yoke if you wanted. I have chosen this dark brown is what I have the most of. So it's the main color. And I decided to do all the ribbing in that sort of medium tan. I don't know how much yardage I have of this dark stuff. I should probably just weigh it and calculate it. This might not end up being a long sleeve sweater, which is fine because again, it'll be good for transitional, those sort of in between seasons. But I wanted to use the different colors. So I've got this tan bit here. This is top down, obviously, for the neck ribbing. I'm using the dark color for the main color. And then so far I'm using the lightest natural color for the vines. I might make one of the vines this tan. I haven't decided yet. I'm kind of deciding that as I go. We shall see. But it's a very intuitive chart. It's an easy pattern to follow. I'm very much enjoying it. My only worry is that because this yarn is delicate and because it has already had some moth damage, let me tell you how much I hate those little fuckers. I just hope I don't run into problems with that later. In fact, when I cast this on last night, and I had to cast on 3 times because the leftover ball I picked up of the tan, there were breaks in it during the cast on. So I had to like pitch those few yards and start over a few times. Since then, it's been okay. So hopefully I've caught the last of the damage, but this yarn is too beautiful to throw away. And it's just, I can tell that when it blocks, it's going to fill in all the stitches for the color work. It's just really nice. So I did not really expect to cast on that project. I kept having all these other ideas come into my head, but this is the one that I felt like knitting. So that's what I'm working on right now. Okay. I do want to show you though the yarns that I've been swatching because I'm eager to start those too. So in my last episode, I showed you the yarns that I got in New Zealand, and I don't want to let those fall by the wayside. So I made swatches, and I'm thinking about patterns, and you know, one of these will be on my needles soon. So one of the yarns I got was another merino possum blend. This is an upcycled one. So it uses fabric offcuts, I guess, that they must chop it up and turn it into yarn somehow. I don't know. There's not a detailed explanation, but this is called Brush Tail Upcycle Possum Merino. This is fingering weight. So they also had a DK weight in the shop. There's 200 yards per 50 grams of this. 200 meters per 50 grams. And remember how I said with the shawl that the possum just sort of fills in the stitches? It's true of this too. I used a size 3 and a size 4 to swatch. I haven't washed this, but this is what it looks like so far. I used the trick where you just do yarn overs to help you remember your needle size, which is very useful if you make a swatch and then put it away for 7 years like I did with the Clara Yarn, because then you can just measure it again. You don't have to re-swatch. So with the size 3 needles, I got 6.5 stitches per inch, which is exactly what I need for the Tanea sweater by Elizabeth Doherty, which is what I plan to make with it. And I went ahead and decided to try it with the size 4 needle just to see how I like it. I get 6 stitches per inch, which is a great sport weight gauge with a size 4 needle. I really like the feel of either one. The smaller needle doesn't feel too dense. The larger one doesn't feel too drapey. It's just kind of like this magic play-doh yarn that does whatever you want it to. So I will probably make the Tanea sweater out of this. Tanea. I'm not sure how you say it. But since I haven't started, you never know. I could change my mind and do something wildly different. But that was nice that I got a gauge that I was expecting and that I wanted out of that yarn. That was a little different for the second yarn that I came home with. This is called Naturally, New Zealand made, big natural. This label has like big box store vibes, which isn't a criticism or anything. It's just, you know, very workhorse standard useful yarn. And it's a big old skein. It's 150 grams. This is a natural charcoal color. I got it because I really like this dark gray, and I do not often see naturally colored wool that is this color. There's a lot of creams and browns, not so much dark charcoal. Now it's listed as a DK, and I swatched with both size 6 and 7 needles. So the bottom part is my size 6. When I use the size 6, I like the feel of it. It's fine. The top part is where I used a size 7, a little looser, of course. I really like the feel of that too. And I did a little cable up here in the corner just to see how well it shows up. And as I suspected, the cable doesn't stand out terribly well. Because the yarn is a dark color and it's heathery, there's just kind of a lot to compete with the cable pattern. So I imagine if you wanted to make a cable design and it called for very bold cables, you know, like a lot of stitches crossing over each other, you know, something very sort of three-dimensional and dynamic, it would stand out. Something with a lot of little details and intricacies, probably not in this yarn. So my original idea was to maybe make a horology by Kate Davies. That's not going to happen because that is such a beautiful, I love the cable design on that sweater, and whatever yarn I use for it, I really want that to show up. So that's not what I'm going to do with this yarn. Second of all, I'm getting a little bit fatter gauge than the label calls for. And judging how the part of the swatch feels that I used size 6 to make, if I went down a needle size, I think it would be too stiff. So with the size 6 needle, I was getting 21 stitches per 4 inches, which isn't that far off from the label. The label says you should be getting 22. So that's close. Close enough you could do a little math to jigger if you wanted on a pattern. And with the size 7 needle, I was getting 19 stitches per 4 inches, which to me is more like a worsted weight gauge. I like it though. I like the feel of it. And I know I should wash this and soak it and see if the gauge changes. I know I should do that. So I probably will before I actually cast anything on. But I thought I would show you the patterns I found that could potentially work for this yarn at that gauge that I got with a size 7 in particular. Because it's dark and heathery, I was thinking kind of a plain basic cardigan would be a good fit with this. So the designer, Carrie Bostic Hogue, she's also Matter or Matter Made. I don't know how active she is, but she's also a photographer. I have few of her books, so like several of her patterns. She does a lot of real basic designs. One of those books is called Swoon Maine, which has a lovely aesthetic. It's got all these photos taken on the coast, all these like pale, dreamy, skinny white women, you know, standing on the rocks of the sea and looking wistful. It's just, it's definitely selling an aesthetic. So you can like it or not, but it's appealing photos and appealing knitwear. She also does a lot of her designs in kid sizes, which is nice. So I'm looking for the pattern that I found where the gauge matches. I think it's a cardigan, and I am trying to remember what it's called. And I think I must have passed it up, so I'm just going to keep talking while I find it. Shore cardigan. It was like the very first thing. And for some reason you can't see a full-size picture of it, but you'll get an idea. So here's what the top looks like. I mean, look, it's basic top down, looks like raglan shaping or close to it, cardigan. And the bottom, this is what cracks me up. It's more obvious in some of the other patterns, but can you see how it's shaped so that the front kind of curves up and it really dips in the back? This is like a very 20 teens look. Doing a lot of short rows so that your sweater really hangs down in the back. And she's got, maybe it's in another one of her books, she's got some patterns where it's a really dramatic effect. Like there's gotta be at least 5 or 6 inches difference in the length between the back and the front. Which is more than I would want to do, especially these days. I think a little bit's kind of nice because you get that coverage on your bum and it doesn't bunch around your hips, but it can be kind of extreme. So, man, I'm not finding a great example in this book. I think there must be one in another one of her collections, but you can just take my word for it. So that's an idea. I mean, it's very basic and simple, but the gauge matches, and I think her pattern writing is pretty good. I'll have to check for errata, but that's a possibility. The other one is really quite similar. A few years ago, how many years ago? She published a couple of books with Making, the magazine that is no longer in print. They just do digital stuff now. Can't find the publication date, but they published this thing in collaboration with Grainline Studio, which does sewing patterns, called Uniform. And there's actually 2 volumes. I have them both. There's this one for adult sizes, and then there's one for children's sizes. And I have them both, and I actually made the uniform tunic for one of my nieces several years ago, when she was like really, really little. But the cool thing is that there's a basic cardigan pattern in 2 gauges. So this gauge, which matches what I got, and then a lighter gauge, a sport weight gauge. And you know, here's one series of photos. But she gives you, here's another version. Here you can see that high-low contrast in this one really well, I think. But she gives you instructions for different collar styles. So if you want more of a shaped collar or plain, she tells you how to do pockets. I'm pretty sure it's top down, so customizing length is not something that really takes that much figuring out, but she gives you the basic yardage you need, and then how much to add if you want full sleeves versus elbow length, if you want the shaped collar versus the plain, if you want pockets. So you can figure out just how much yardage you need for each one. This has that weird curved hem and garter stitch. So, you know, basically what I'm looking for is a plain cardigan pattern that calls for the same gauge I'm getting, that does all the math for me. And I've got a couple of options here in my very own collection. Oh, look at this one. This has a shorter body length and lots of that curved shaping. This was like the thing like 10 years ago. And just for fun, I'll show you the sewing pattern, which I have not made, and I might. I mean, if I'm ever in the mood for like that homestead look, maybe. It looks comfy. It's got these pockets in the front. There's a sleeveless version. The tunic pattern also has sleeves. Maybe I can pull it off. Maybe I would look really frumpy. I don't know. But anyway, those are my thoughts for that yarn. The very last thing I wanted to mention before we go is that I've been reading. I read a lot. I don't always talk about it because I don't always have something very interesting to say. But I just wanted to mention that I've been really into books by the writer Elizabeth Strout. She won a Pulitzer Prize for one of them that I read called Olive Kitteridge. I'm not sure when it was written, but I read that, and I read Olive Again, which is about the same character but later in life. And then there is a series of books about a character named Lucy Barton. So I read O. William, and I'm reading Lucy by the Sea, and I should have probably started with I Am Lucy Barton, but I don't think the library had that one. But there is something about her writing that just draws you in. It's kind of hard to explain why. She writes characters that are very flawed, and yet very relatable, and somehow you find yourself liking them. At least I do, even though they're the sort of people, if I met in real life, if I met somebody like Olive Kitteridge or even Lucy Barton in real life, I would probably be a little put off by them because she writes them where you can tell they're a little bit abrasive and not always like, you know, the sort of warm, friendly, motherly characters that we're used to seeing in literature. But yeah, it's really compelling. And the other thing I appreciate about her writing is that she's writing about older people. She writes with such beautiful insight and compassion about what it is like. I mean, I'm 45, so I don't know what it's like to be those ages, but she writes about people who are in their 60s and 70s and even their 80s, and just, you know, how their perspective changes, how they, you know, how their bodies feel. And I realized reading it that we don't have a lot of that in literature. I mean, there's plenty out there, I suppose, about old men, but we just don't have that much first person perspective from aging women. Isabel Allende does that too, which is really good. But, you know, once you realize it, it's kind of shocking. Kind of shocking that we don't have more of that. The other thing I've been reading, I just finished an audiobook actually. It's called Bad Blood. It's by a journalist named John Carreyrou, who was with the Wall Street Journal. Now I think he's doing his own thing because he's making a lot of money with his Pulitzer Prizes and stuff. But he spent many years reporting on the company Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, its founder. She is now serving a federal prison sentence for defrauding people out of hundreds of millions of dollars. And the book is, I mean, I'm not saying I necessarily recommend it for its literary quality. It's written kind of like a very long newspaper article where it's sort of a play-by-play and you get a little bit lost in all the names and, you know, who's in, who's out, who came in, who left and everything. But overall, it's kind of a fascinating story of how somebody could get away with lying and with fraud for so long just because she was very, very good at talking herself out of situations. And very, very good at talking old men into parting with a lot of money to invest in her company. So I've gone down a whole rabbit hole. There's a documentary on Netflix that I've watched. There's a Hulu series that's sort of the fictionalized version of it, starring Amanda Seyfried, who is fantastic. She is fantastic. Naveen Andrews is in it. He's also very good, as well as Stephen Fry. Really, really great performances by all those folks. And there's a podcast series I just found that I'm listening to. I don't know why I go down these rabbit holes. I think there is just, right now, I am trying to understand why people will fall into the thrall of people who are very, very bad leaders and pathological liars. I think we can think of a few other examples in our modern society who are a problem that way. Anyway, it's just really interesting, and I don't have an answer for it. I don't have a way to solve this problem, but it's kind of interesting. And one day I'll get tired of it, I suppose, but not yet. So anyway, I need to go. That's all I have for you today. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.